Dr. Jazz.
Thanks
Dr.
for finding time,
Jazz.
Eric. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for scheduling this. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I have you on so many records, and you know, I listened actually to Soldier's Hymn today, and
Oh,
that's
wow.
still a burning record, man. It's like, I love what Hutch does on drums, and Dwayne. I mean, yeah, he
Yeah.
was a monster player.
And we were all roommates in Brooklyn.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Wow.
We were all living together in Brooklyn at the time, and they
Oh,
were playing with Betty Carter.
oh yeah, of course, yeah.
So, they said, "Hey, man, we're looking for a third roommate." And I was like, "Absolutely, let's do it." I mean, I barely even knew them, but it was a different time. Everything was just different. If you
Everyone is
take,
saying that. Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
it was. I think there was a lot of good energy, and we all were very much fans of the music. We used to sit and listen to music all the time. And Gregory Hutchinson would get up, 9 o'clock in the morning, and he'd start practicing, playing along with records and doing his Will Coxon and all the stuff that Kenny Washington and Louis Nash
Mm.
gave me to practice. And Dwayne Burnham was, playing with Blue Note Records. And I didn't have a piano at the place at the time, but it was a great time. It was a wonderful time to be a young jazz musician, and just so much on the horizon. So many bands. Everybody had bands.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask you, I mean, later about, but since we started there, how was it for you, like when you moved to New York? Because, so many greats were still alive, from Elvin to Art to all band leaders, right? And piano players. Mulgrew was still there. I know you played that quartet gig with Mulgrew and Kenny. That's on YouTube. And I mean, there was so much music out there. Like, how was that like for you when you came to New York? And why did you decide to go to New York, actually? What was the story there?
It's funny. I think about life and the decisions that I think that I make intentionally, and then the decisions that are kind of made for you because of the way things are. And at that time in the late 1980s, New York was still a little sketchy.
Sketchy. Yeah, yeah.
After the 70s, and then the 80s was, we're starting to see some cleanup, through Mayor Koch, and then Giuliani cleaning up the mafia, and things started to change, and Dinkins. But moving to New York in 1989, 1990, it just made sense. It didn't make sense to do anything else. It didn't make sense to live anyplace else if you really wanted to thrive purely as a jazz musician. If you just wanted to do jazz, New York City was the place for you to be. And that's nothing against the Paris scene or the
Sure, sure, sure.
Italian scene or the British scene. There are great jazz musicians, of course, globally, but jazz was
Absolutely.
created here, and New York City just has been the mecca for so long. So the decision was kind of made for me in advance. Not everybody made that decision. Some people never moved to New York
Yeah.
City, which is perfectly fine. For me, I knew that the musicians that I wanted to play with, most of them were in New York City. Now, Bunky Green was down in Florida, Von
Mm.
Freeman was in Chicago,
Yep.
Teddy Edwards was in Los Angeles, but in New York City at that time, I was going to see, George Coleman, Junior Cook, Clifford Jordan. There were just so many more jazz musicians in New York City that I wanted to play with. And for somebody like me, I needed to have that hands-on experience. So
Mm.
I don't know if I so much made a decision as much as I just kind of just fell into the trope. This is what you do. You move to New
Mm.
York.
Mm. Who were the first people you connected with? I mean, I know you started to play with Wynton quite early after you moved, but like, uh, what were your first connections actually that the guys that you started to play with?
My first organic connections in New York City were, of course, like I said before, Dwayne Burno and
Yeah.
Gregory Hudson, Antonio Hart, Taurus Mateen,
Mm.
Roy Hargrove. Um, I'm seeing their faces, but I'm having a hard time placing. Ari Rowland,
Oh yeah,
Ben Wolf,
that's your generation. Yeah, of course.
Christian
Yeah.
McBride. Uh, come on. I bumped into Cyrus Chestnut and Benny Green very early, Peter Washington. So these are all of the, the Generation Jones merging into Gen X generation of musicians. And we used to jam at each other's houses. And of course, they had all, the jam sessions at Visionis and
Oh yeah.
Blue Note and Smalls. It was just, it was amazing. It was really a wonderful time.
What about Wynton? I mean, how did you? I mean, Kenny played obviously with that quartet. That's one of the best bands ever. Or quintet is also like. But how did you connect with Wynton and your story with him?
I met Wynton at a music school I was attending in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay,
And the dean
interesting.
of the school knew he was going to be in town. And so he had him come over to the school because where I was, they didn't have a jazz department yet. I was basically taking classical lessons. And so Wynton came and did a master class. I was, I guess, I was 15 years old.
Wow. And how was then? You got the gig like in 92 or 91, right?
1989 was the first time I played with him.
Oh, already? Wow. Okay.
Marcus Roberts, previous piano
Oh
player,
yeah, exactly.
was making his emergence as a leader.
Oh yeah. Wow. What is it like for you to play with Wynton? I mean, your experience. You made some incredible records on those Columbia dates, and
Thank you. It was, it was sort of a, there was a great deal of dichotomy in that experience because being so young, I was not prepared for the rigorousness of being in such a high profile band touring all the time with a bunch of grown men. I was still a kid. They'll tell you that 18 is an adult, but that's not true.
yeah, yeah.
That's purely for political and economic purposes. 18 is not an adult, not mentally, not biologically, and truth be told, if I'm honest, I had no business out on the road with a bunch of grown men traveling the world like that. It was a wonderful experience to be able to see the world, and I took full advantage of all of that. But it's not something that I was emotionally, psychologically, or spiritually ready for.
Yeah. Can imagine. I mean, and I can imagine. It must have been hard, like being on the road for 5-6 weeks when you're 19 or something. That's brutal, probably.
I had never,
Yeah.
never experienced that before.
Wow. Yeah, I remember my longest tour was 3 weeks, and that was like torture. I mean, it was fun, you know what I mean? It's amazing, but still, in the end, like gig 18 or 17, it's like, shit, man. You begin to question your chops and everything, basically, what you do psychologically and physically, and it's like, that's not easy. And yeah, those guys have been doing it for 15 years already.
Living out of a suitcase, you're
Yeah,
in a different city every night.
yeah,
But at 18, it didn't feel. It was fun because I was 18. I was 18, and I'm walking around in the middle of. I had never been to Cal. I had never even heard of Kalispell, Montana. And you're walking around in the middle of Hong Kong. I mean, that's just
that's crazy. Yeah,
it's wild. It's really, when I think back on it, I think about how crazy that was to be able to travel like that. And people take it for granted now, and of course, traveling has changed so much.
yeah. No. I mean, in the 90s, it was so much more touring. You actually could. Well, I haven't done touring there then yet, but you know what guys told me. Obviously, you could be on the road for 6-7 weeks and still do a lot of gigs. Now it's like,
Yeah,
you know,
everything changed. The music
everything.
changed,
Yeah,
the times changed, the economy's changed, the politics. It just all of that has had an impact on
yeah,
how artists are able to function creatively. COVID just changed the entire game. It
absolutely.
just changed literally everything. So, and what artists do, we pivot. We just find another way to create. But we are going to create. Don't get it twisted. It's just going to take some revamping.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's changed. Yeah, everyone is teaching it also, and you know, that's almost like for 80% of people, that's the primary gig, right? Luckily, I mean, fingers crossed, but that's how it is. It's like,
I enjoy teaching.
yeah,
I the 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 exchange of information and watching young people respond positively to talking about different ways of resolving chords or different ways of resolving chord progressions. So your basic 2-5-1 and say, hey, let's try the tritone. What's the tritone? I can explain. And their eyes just light up.
yeah,
Hear something that they either had not heard or had considered before. They probably heard it, but they weren't quite sure how to process it.
yeah,
And I tell students also, almost at the detriment to my livelihood, I say, the truth be told, you don't have to study with me. You don't have to go to school. All the information is right there on the records. The music was there before there was jazz in schools in the 1940s and 50s and on. You know, before Tanglewood, before Manhattan,
yeah,
the music, the information was literally right there on a Louis Armstrong record. What is it? That's 1920, what, 1928? So, you know, long before jazz education, the information was always there.
there, yeah,
It wasn't on record, then it was right there wherever Louis Armstrong was playing. And if you were hip enough to go and watch him and listen to him, okay, you could try, try to figure it out. The information's right there on the record. That's the real education.
yeah, yeah, listening and transcribing also on your own. But someone has to give you the context and system. I think that's so important. That's why teachers are and mentors important.
Absolutely, because not every student has the perspicacity to grasp what's happening.
Yep.
You know, they can't always hear immediately what's going on. So if you hear the whole theory behind that, playing modally, Dorian scales and things like that, all of that absolutely needs to be put into context for those students who can't really hear immediately what's going on. They need to have that theory so they can understand. Okay, so when I play a 2-5-1, all I gotta do is just play a C major scale. Okay, but then taking it a step further and explaining to them that you're not playing scales when you improvise. The scales are just there to give you a reference.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like the sentences and the words you remember from mentors. You know, like, and you keep them all your life, basically. I remember I was 18 and I came to New York for the first time, and I had lessons with Schofield. And he said, like, you know, we were playing Stella by Starlight, and I was like, and he was like, man, you know, think like a saxophone player, breathe, you know. And I was like, man, shit. Obviously, yeah, I can do like, you can as well, you know, you can play all the time, but, and I kept that like for almost 40 years now, like 30 years, this sentence. I'm like, okay.
Schofield is so melodic, so lyrical. You know?
Yeah.
That's the real key to me for improvisation is thinking of your hand, if you're a piano player or if you're a saxophone player or whatever, thinking of your hands as if it's an actual singing voice.
Yep.
So versus if I could do this. Okay, that's very technical, it's articulate, but then if I want to make it sing, I got to be a bit more compassionate, a bit more, put some more emotion into it.
Yep, exactly.
Something as simple as a major scale can be super hip and super musical.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Erica, I mentioned before, like Soldier's Hymn, and how did that record happen? Because you were so young, actually, and what's the story behind that one? You becoming a band leader?
I honestly don't remember. Alan Bates, who was, I think, the president of Candid Records at the time.
Yeah.
Some kind of way he reached out to me. I don't remember. It had to be a phone call because there wasn't any email. So it had to be a phone call. And it said, hey, I'd like to record you. And I'd like Chick Corea's engineer, Bernie Kirsch, and we'll do it over at the Hit Factory. And It'll be a trio record, and then we'll release it. And I said, okay, I didn't know anything about the business.
Sure.
I just copywriting and publishing, and I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so we did rehearse. I know that, and then we went to the studio, and I think inside of 6 hours, we did the record. If I had it to do all over again, I would have said no.
Really interesting.
If I had a lot of things to do all over again, I would have said no. Because, when you're 18, you don't know what you're not ready for. You don't know. All you see is opportunity, and it's a great opportunity. Wow, I get to play with so-and-so, and I get to, yes. But you don't take into consideration, I'm not really ready for that. So I wound up jumping into the deep end, feet first. But it was a lot of fun playing with Dwayne and
Yeah.
those guys were my peers, and we were all born within days of each other in June. We're all Geminis. First it was Hutch, then Berno, then me, and in 1970, and we just had a certain type of empathy, certain type of simpatico.
Yeah.
So I think with that date in particular, the rawness is there.
Yeah.
The potential is there. With Hutch being the more advanced of the three of us, largely in part because Hutch is a native New Yorker. He's born in Brooklyn.
Yep.
So he was able to come through all of what was going on in the 1970s, 80s, and be mentored by C Sharp and run into, cats like Stephen Scott. I'm not even sure. I'm sure he must have gone to school with some of the jazz cats as well. I don't really know his background as far as that's concerned. But it was right there in New York City. Yeah. And that gives you a certain kind of advantage. So he schooled us on a lot of things.
No, it's like you said, it's a really raw but really fresh record. I mean, it's a burning record. It's I sometimes think of like early Wayne Shorter stuff or Coltrane stuff, and it's like it's early stuff, but I'm so happy it's there. It's like because you see the development of an artist, and I think that's so important for music fans.
For that reason, for that purpose, I'm glad I did the record.
Yeah.
Because if you listen to me in 1989, 1990, and you listen to me now, it's you hear the essence is still the same, but I'm a very different musician.
Yeah, the maturity. Yeah.
Hopefully, I don't sound exactly the same as I did 30-something years ago. But like you said, listen to John Coltrane with Miles Davis's first great quintet. Yep. And then after Miles fired him, and then Train goes with Monk, and then Train comes back with Miles, a completely different saxophone player. Yep. And then leaving Miles and then starting his own quartet in a very short period of time. Because he joins Miles in 55?
Yep.
And he dies in 67. That's only 12 years.
Exactly, yeah.
That's really no time at all. But Train was, constantly on it, constantly and searching. Different kind of energy Train had. And then again, Wayne Shorter's first records on VJ. You listen to him
exactly.
Art Blakey, and then you listen to him when he gets with Miles Davis in 1964. It's like, wow, how did you? It's context, the musicians that are surrounding you. Because if you listen to Art Blakey's last recording, Wayne Shorter's last recording with Art Blakey, I guess it was April 64, and then he joins Miles in September of 64, or maybe October after Sam Rivers. And it's like, is this the same cat? Yes, the same cat in a different context.
Yeah, and then you listen, the stuff he did with the last quartet, and it's like, man, it's insane, right? The development. It's still him. You go back 60 years, and it's like, oh shit, yeah, the essence is there. It's like with you, or everyone, I guess. So that's a good thing, I think. But I wanted to ask you, the main reason was for this talk, the new record, right? And it's really mature and it's swinging. I like that. It's like, it's nice to hear, and obviously you have an amazing assemblement of players there, and you go way back with all of them. What's the story behind the new record and like the compositions also? You're such a great composer also, by the way. So
Thank you. Oh, thank you
to
so
that.
much. It's a lot of things I'm feeling since COVID again. COVID really just kind of was a game changer for so many of us. But when I moved to Tennessee in June of 2020,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
I didn't know even that. Oh, okay.
right during COVID, I accepted a position at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville.
Okay.
Donald Brown had been teaching there for about 35 years, and he was retiring.
Yeah.
So they reached out to me and asked me if I was interested, and I wasn't quite sure if I was ready to take on the challenge of full-time teaching, but I wanted to try it. I said, well, this is kind of where I am. I'm in a different chapter, I'm in a different stage, and the road is really starting to wear on me just a little bit, and I wasn't in the best physical shape, and I got down to Knoxville, Tennessee, and it was very quiet and safe and clean. And just very different from the life I was living in Los Angeles. I was kind of starting to feel a little closed in, a little claustrophobic. COVID changed all of that.
Yeah.
It was down in Knoxville that I realized, I said, I can not so much reinvent myself, but I can be myself. And growing up in a very conservative, religious household, in a black neighborhood, in a black family, in the United States of America, is not the safest place for queer people. And by the time I hit 50, I said, I'm tired of hiding, diminishing. I can just go ahead and be myself and be open and be honest about who I am. In a red state,
Yeah.
which is strange, but I just felt that comfort. I felt that safety because it was also a college town. And Knoxville is in East Tennessee, which tends to lean a bit more liberal than West, definitely more so than Middle Tennessee, absolutely more so than Middle Tennessee. East Tennessee was, a little bit more liberal leaning, feeling. So it was at that point that I really began to just emerge as I can be somebody other than the preacher's kid who played piano in church and was always closeted. Around young people, a different generation who were far more accepting. And I just felt safer to do that. And then that also led, so now that I was emotionally and spiritually healthy, I was trying to get physically healthy. So I got myself into the gym and, I started dropping some weight and strengthening and eating better. And all of that had an impact on my music. So now here we are 3 years later. No, I left Tennessee last year, but three years after I came out, and my music began to reflect a more chill, relaxed, mature, is the word you used,
Yeah.
seasoned, confident musician. I have nothing to prove to anyone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Prove that I can play. I don't have to prove that I can write. Now I can kind of just chill and do more of the things that I feel comfortable doing and more of the things that I want to do. So this last record sort of takes me, full circle with the musicians that I came up with on the scene in the late 80s and early 90s. Peter Washington was the first bassist I worked with.
Yeah.
My first gig as a leader was with Peter Washington.
Really? Oh, wow. Interesting. Wow. That's amazing.
Up into Farnsworth and Eric Alexander on the road, and then later with Peyton. And I wanted to assemble a group of musicians that the world knew as certain types of players, put them in a context that stretched all of us, challenged all of us. Our essence is the same, but context is a little different
Yep.
than normal for all of us. And we were all pleasantly surprised at the results because it was very much kind of old school, kind of throwback in the way we recorded. We're all in the same room, no headphones, everybody just listening and adjusting our dynamics. And here's a sketch of something. And it's in A major, so hey, let's see what we come up with. We couldn't resort to our normal isms
Licks, yeah, and stuff, yeah.
A major because A major is still kind of a challenging key because most of us don't play in it all that often. B major is another one. I have a tune in B major. And they rose to the occasion. They rose to the challenge. They didn't shirk away from it. There was a little bit of, hesitation because it's like, well, what am I supposed to do here? The structures were not 100% clear. I said, well, do whatever you want. Joe Farnsworth was like, well, you want brushes or sticks? Because most of these musicians, most of us who play in accompaniment roles, especially in the rhythm section, are used to being told what to do.
Yeah.
We'll put a break here, lay it out there, play in 2, play in 4. So for the average drummer, for the average professional drummer who's a jazz drummer, it's usually going to be drums or sticks. For the jazz bassists, it's you want 2 or 4, right? And the horn players, they are used to collaborating. They know what to do. They're on the front line, so they know they have to match their sounds and their timbres. But if they didn't, I would have been okay with that. I think they just kind of naturally, organically fell into that idea of trying to make sure that their sound had a certain kind of blend. Yep. But when they're playing in unison, you could hear some of the notes aren't quite exact. There were a couple of mistakes, but I'm okay with that because it's not classical music. It's perfectly acceptable for someone to play a wrong note. Now, we could have gone back and fixed it, but I wanted the rawness, I wanted the energy, I wanted the looseness, I wanted the feeling there. And everything is one take.
Oh, wow, beautiful. Yeah.
Done a second or a third take, but then by that time, it's going to sound too rehearsed, and the energy and the freshness is not going to be there.
Yeah.
And I think often people sort of misinterpret the jazz musician's creative approach to making and creating and recording music as lackadaisical or lazy or not paying attention to detail. And these are people who don't understand how jazz works.
Yeah.
Jazz is always in progress, right? Beethoven's Fifth Symphony or Johann Sebastian Bach's Goldberg Variations are never going to change.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're exactly what they've always been for the past 200-300 years. It's now up to the interpreter to interpret his own tempi, feeling, dynamics, all those kinds of things. But the notes are the notes. And in jazz, it's not about the notes. It's about the feeling that we give to the notes. So if you hear, that's going to sound like a mistake to a certain kind of ear, but the rest of us are like, yes, more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, Coleman Hawkins said, if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. Yeah. And again, that's not to say that playing jazz well is about making mistakes. No, of course, I absolutely do all of that. I warm up and I always insist and encourage practicing to be efficient on your instrument so that you can do whatever you want to do. Not so that you can be perfect, but just so that you can play whatever you want to play. And if you make a mistake, oh well.
There's no mistake anyway, if that was the rule, then you could delete Monk and everyone else, and it's like
it will tell everyone.
Yeah, it's but no, the new record's like, it starts with this new glow, and it's like you have this glow now, even when you're talking about it. It's like, and that's the story of the record. I really like it. It's a beautiful one, and it's nice to hear. Joe and Peter have been playing together for more than 30 years, and you can feel the connection, and it's so nice. And also with Nicholas, it's so beautiful.
It's again, like you said, it's a familiar sound, it's a familiar pairing.
Yep.
But you haven't quite heard them like this.
Yeah.
And I'm not claiming it's groundbreaking.
It's a swinging, beautiful record. Yeah.
The intention is for it to be a fresh approach and response for us in the circumstance and context that we were in. And again, that hesitation that we sometimes felt when we were recording was cautious enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Cautious respect for me and the music and for each other, and bold enthusiasm. Because, well, okay, fine. I'm going to go ahead and just
Yep.
play this. And I got that exactly. I didn't know what I intended. I just intended for them to collaborate with me and do what they wanted to do and be comfortable. And after each take, we were like, and Paul Stash was like, you want to do another one? We were like, no, not really. And Eric wanted to fix a part, and Eric was particularly interesting on this date because Eric's playing is very much aligned.
Yeah, in the grid kind of. Yeah.
Straight down the pike. He plays right through the chords, and he's got a system that he uses. And the only benefit with that in this music was that I knew he was going to have no issue with the chord changes. But where he was kind of like, well, Eric, maybe if we do this and this and this, and I kept saying no to his ideas because it was going to take us back to a very prearranged, very, kind of plotted out type of vibe, which was not what I wanted. But nobody knew that coming to the date. They thought they were coming to an Eric Scott Reed date that's rearranged and very, this is how the intro goes, this is the outro. No, it was very much right on the spot, just saying, whatever you want to do is fine with me there. Nobody, they weren't accustomed to that. Neither was I.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, many times that's missing from jazz nowadays. It's too perfect, I don't mind it, but sometimes bands are playing nowadays 11 cross 17 over 7 with the hardest harmony, and it's like, man, wow, it's cool, but then you put on still Kind of Blue or whatever, Adam's Apple, and you're like, shit, that's better. I'm so
it's impressive. It's impressive to hear.
It's impressive, yeah, but just the energy and
all the hybridization and
yeah.
That's all very, very impressive. And again, the amount of concentration and work that it takes to do that, for me, it ceases to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
I need that organic blues, African. I need the feeling to be there. I was listening to Tigran.
Mm-hmm, sure. Hamasyan, yeah.
Hamasyan, thank you.
Yeah.
I never. Tigran Hamasyan. And he did an arrangement of an Elmo Hope composition called Dida. Have you heard it?
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
And it's incredible.
It's insane, but yeah.
But again, listening to it, I was like, this is a lot coming at me. And I said, okay, and I tried to appreciate it from a pianistic standpoint. He's a wonderful pianist, composer, arranger, all of that. And then I went back and listened to Clifford Brown's version of it with Elmo Hope on piano. I said, okay. And I can understand that some musicians were like, oh man, this is just 4/4. They're just playing in 4/4. They're just swinging. I don't think they appreciate how hard that is to do for a period of time. And by the same token, Tigran's arrangement, you really have to understand, raga, and you got to understand how all that, and it takes time to practice playing in that way. But just my own personal feeling is that it starts to move away from the essence, the nature, and the organic vibration of jazz music. And that's an argument that we don't have. It's just my personal opinion about black music. But again, Tigran's fantastic. I haven't heard a lot from him as of late. Is he kind of like on a sabbatical or something?
No, I haven't heard. Yeah, I don't know what he's doing actually. It's but no, I hear you. It's sometimes a question. You put on a Bobby Timmons or Wynton Kelly record, and they're swinging, and I cook a lot, and then I put on always like an album. I still have CDs,
Yeah.
And I'm like, shit, man, that's incredible. And many of the records that are made, I don't know if they will be alive still 60 years from now. These highly mathematical creations, or they will be, I don't know. But it's just like, the records from the 60s, they are still modern, if you know what I mean. A Love Supreme is like, it was recorded yesterday still. It's really modern, or,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
and yeah, then we are, yeah, that's a different subject. But I don't know. It's like, but that's what I wanted to say about your record, that it has this something which is beautiful. So
Thank you, thank you.
good job, guys.
I'm trying to go for beauty and honesty
Yeah,
more than
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Eric, not to take too much of your time, but I wanted to ask you about. I've read that you played also with Joe Henderson and Freddie Hubbard when you started in New York, and uh, what was that like for you, and getting those gigs with the elders while they were still alive, actually, and working? And
again. I was so green and so so not ready. I started playing quartet with Joe Henderson,
oh wow,
and the band was usually Charlie Hayden and Joe Chambers.
oh my God, really?
It was very interesting how that worked out. We did quite a few gigs together, and then sometimes it would be Freddie Hubbard. And so, and of course, I was also playing with Freddie Hubbard's quintet, so I wound up playing with each of their groups and then with both of them together.
Wow.
And Freddie Hubbard was such an extrovert, and Joe Henderson was a complete introvert.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, whether it's before the set or after the set or in between sets, I was never allowed in the dressing room.
Really? Wow.
And we were playing at Catalina Bar and Grill one night when they were over on Cahuenga Boulevard in their first location. And it was Joe and Charlie and Joe, two Joes. So they would do two sets. We'd do two sets a night and just smoking. I'm just smoking. It would be the same 8 tunes. Every gig we played, it was the same 8 tunes. Invitation, Confirmation, Body and Soul, Take the A Train. Next set, Stella by Starlight, Record May, Ask Me Now, and I forgot what the close would be. Every now and again,
Oh wow, man.
every now and again, he'd pull out Serenity. Every now and again, he'd pull out Punjab if I begged him. But Joe was very laid back, very chill. So anyway, after the set was over, I wanted to go back and hang with the cats. The door was closed and locked. So I'm like, and the door kind of cracks open and Charlie Hayden peeps. I says, "What do you want?" I said, "Can I come in?" He's like, "No." And he closed the door.
That's quite
I didn't know what the hell was going on, and I clearly did not want to know. It was not my business. It was grown folks' business. I can only imagine, but I don't want to speculate because I don't know. I wasn't there. But
Yeah, yeah, sure.
let's consider the source. Let's consider who it was. What you might think, who knows? I don't know. But they didn't let me in. And for whatever reason, I'm grateful. Because once we got to the bandstand, it was good. It was game on. So they didn't really have much to say to me because I was a kid. And I'm like, what? You could have gotten anybody your age, Larry Willis, John Hicks. You could have gotten anybody, and they chose me. And
How did that happen? That they chose you? I mean,
Joe Henderson calls me. Again, this is back in the day before internet and emails.
absolutely.
He calls me on the phone. He was living in San Francisco. He calls me on the phone. I'm living at my parents' house at the time. And I don't know how he got my number. I didn't care. He just, "Hey, man, this is Joe Henderson." I said, "Oh, Mr." And I went to the whole thing. Like, Mr. Henderson, I love your work. Yeah. So I got a gig coming up at Catalina Bar and Grill, and I want to know if you can make it. Can you, I said, "Oh, absolutely. I know all your music, everything you've written." He says, "Oh, yeah. Do you know, what was the first tune?" The first tune he said was, he liked to play monk tunes, so he said, "Ask Me Now."
Okay.
I said, "Oh yeah, of course, yeah, I know Ask Me Now." And then he starts playing Ask Me Now, and then he starts playing the scales through all the chord changes. I was like, "Hey Joe, I know the tune." Yeah, oh, okay. How about Stella by Starlight? I said, "Yeah, I know Stella by Starlight." And he starts playing the scales through all the chord changes. And I'm like, this is starting to get a little ridiculous. So I said, how long is this going to? 3 hours later, after playing through all the tunes, playing all the, I'm like, I guess, I don't know. We didn't rehearse. There was no rehearsal.
Well,
And that was it. I was on the gig. It was very different back then, getting gigs. You just showed up. You know, and if a cat like that called you, Freddie Hubbard or Betty Carter or Art Blakey, you just learned the book. This is what we did. And I don't know if that's still the case nowadays. I have no idea. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But in those days, there were no charts. A lot of these cats were playing standards anyway. But even if they were playing originals, there was no book. They weren't sending you charts. They weren't bringing charts to the gig.
yeah.
You either knew the book or you didn't. Freddie Hubbard had charts, but only because the drummer, Ralph Penland, who was playing in Freddie Hubbard's band at the time, put that book together because he knew how Freddie could be. If Freddie was not going to show up, who knows? And Freddie was liable to call anything.
Oh.
Anything. He didn't care. Either you said yes to the gig, so that means you knew the book. So on the plane ride from LA up to San Francisco, we were playing in San Francisco, a jazz festival up there. And Ralph Henderson was going through, Ralph Penland was going through the charts with me, and, Super Blue and, Hubcap and all the tunes, Skydive, all the stuff that Freddie was playing, and he liked to play Caravan, all this kind of stuff. So I said, is there a set list? And he just laughed at me. He's going to just start playing, and he had to be ready. So
yeah.
I hadn't even met Freddie at that point. And who recommended me for Freddie's gig? I think it was probably a bassist, Richard Reed, out here in Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken. So we get to the gig. It's in Texas. No, where was it? The first gig was in California or Texas. Now I don't remember. Anyway, we get on stage, and I met Freddie 5 minutes before we're going on stage. Hey, Mr. Hubbard. Hey, man, what's up? Oh, you want to know who I am? He had on sunglasses. Freddie was not even there. So we're on stage, and I'm looking around. Is somebody going to tell me what we're playing? And Ralph, he's like this. Who's playing bass? Andy Simpkins on bass. Don Braden on tenor saxophone. And nobody's saying anything to me. I'm like, talk about trial by fire. This is Hayes in the first quarter. And, and Hubs, but... And then he just goes, like that. And I was like, what the hell am I supposed to do? And the first tune was like Intrepid Fox.
Okay, yeah.
I'm like, hey, oh my God. I don't even remember exactly what happened, but some kind of way I got through it. And so I must have done okay because he kept calling me.
Wow. That's heavy, man. That's like, by today's standards, that's
abuse by today's standards.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's an HR nightmare by today's standards. But
that's a good way to learn, though.
It's a great way to learn. It's like, man, either you're ready or you're not. And even if you think you're ready, you're really not ready until you're actually doing it. You don't find out how deep the water is till you jump in it.
Exactly.
It looks all nice and tranquil from up above, but you start reaching for the bottom. Oh shit! You're just gonna swallow the whole pool before you realize what's going on. And I swallowed a whole lot of water playing with Freddie Hubbard. A whole lot of water. I almost they had to give me CPR a couple times because I thought I was gonna pass out. I did. And the gig that I really wanted, though, the gigs that I really wanted were Art Blakey's and Betty Carter's gigs. Those were the gigs I wanted, but they were not available at the time when I was available. But I hung out a lot, and their musicians were always so cool to me. Every time they'd come to LA, I'd take them out to eat, or they'd come to my parents' house to eat. I'd take them to get haircuts, or they still wanted to go play ball, or wanted to go to records. I was the Uber of the 19 before ride shares. And I took them. I was just so enamored with the cats. And in Art Blakey's band at the time, it was Javon Jackson,
Oh yeah.
Andy, Essiet, a tall band, and Frank Lacey, he was shorter than me, and Benny Green,
Benny Green, yeah, on piano. Yeah.
and later Jeff Keezer. And I befriended all of them, and they would let me, Art Blakey would let me sit in, and then
Oh wow.
Betty was, Hutch and Berno and Mark Carey, and Betty would let me sit in, and oh gosh, it was wonderful. And this was what I said, you know what, I gotta be in New York. Because even though there were great jazz musicians in Los Angeles, I was playing with Ralph Penland and Tony Dumas, Billy Childs is out here, Patrice Russian's out here. I had played with the Clayton brothers, Jeff and John Clayton. I was playing with Jerry Wilson's big band. I said Teddy Edwards, Clara Bryant, one of my first mentors, Leroy Vinegar, Red Calendar, Buddy Collette. All these folks were my mentors. But even as fecund as the jazz scene was in the 1980s, even in Los Angeles, where there were more jazz clubs, Ray Brown was out here, there were more
Yeah.
jazz clubs and more jazz musicians alive, it still did not have the energy of New York City, because Los Angeles is so spread out, and you'll have musicians who live as far north as Porter Ranch and as far south as Orange County. LA is huge. Getting around Los Angeles, unless you have a car, even with a car, is a nightmare. Traffic. And you got clubs that are so far apart from each other, the proximity didn't really work. So geographically, it was very complicated. Whereas in New York City, you could walk from Village Vanguard to Sweet Basil, to Visiones, to Mesro, to not Mesro at the time, but to Smalls, and just hop on the train and be there in 15, 20 minutes. So as much as I loved and benefited from being on the Los Angeles scene as a young man, I knew New York was going to take me to the other spaces that I know I needed to go.
But also the spirit, Village Vanguard. You just enter that place and you're like, I go back to 61 and Coltrane Quartet or whatever, and I'm like, oh man, you smell you smell the music there. I don't know. That's how I feel always when I go there. I'm like,
I used to feel that way when I first started playing there, but now that I've been at it 30 something years, it's become more about, it's really very much a personal journey for me artistically.
Yep.
It doesn't matter where I play. Right now I'm here in what used to be a bank vault in downtown LA. And this is a space that I have come to really love because of what I'm able to do in the space. But it also is not so much about the space as much as the space that I'm physically in before I even come inside of the walls and close the door.
Yeah.
I come to whether it's an interview, talking with you, talking with someone who's also a musician and a fan and in the industry, or whether I'm talking with a lay person or talking to one of the cats, I have to prepare myself mentally and emotionally for being able to get ready to talk about music, play music, and then I can bring that to the instrument and all that kind of stuff. The same thing with Out Late. I came to the studio, to the club rather, because that's where we recorded it. I came to the club with no pre-expectations, no preconceived notions about what the music was supposed to sound like or was going to sound like, because I didn't have an end game. Well, I take that back. The end game was trusting the musicians to contribute and collaborate. That was the end game. But I had no idea how it was going to sound, because I wanted the music to dictate what they were going to do. And they'd come and say, okay, well, I'll do this here, I'll do this for you. And then, what do you think, Eric? Whatever you want to do is fine with me.
Yeah.
I'm really, really very, very open to whatever you want to do.
Yeah, that's important. I wanted to ask you this. We mentioned the word maturity many times now, also, and if we go back to the Soldier's Hymn and so many records in between, how has your view on band leading developed through the time, and your personal? I mean, like, in a sense of becoming more comfortable now. When you talk about the new record, you seem to be like really like, okay, yeah, I'm really comfortable while doing that. Like, how was your evolution if you look at it in your own eyes?
From a a psychoanalyst's point of view, if you listen to my music, my recordings from 1990 all the way up to out late, you're going to hear a person who had a lot of trust issues. I think any therapist who's also a jazz fan would be able to psychoanalyze all of us and go, wow. Because our personalities show up in our artistry to a certain degree. It's not always so prevalent. You take someone like Keith Jarrett, who can sit down and just play an E-flat triad,
Yep.
and it's the beautiful things you've heard. Quite in contrast to him as a person. Dan Getz, one of the most beautiful sounds,
Yep.
saxophone in jazz. And he spent the last few years of his life going around apologizing to everyone that he had offended and hurt while he was intoxicated, while he was, strung out, addicted. But there's also an aggressiveness that is in my earlier work that's clearly overcompensating, because I have to hang with the cats. I gotta be strong. It's a competition. And I was like, man, I don't always feel like playing this way. And I had developed a penchant for ballad playing early on, fortunately. So, listening to my records in those days, you definitely hear someone with trust issues. And anytime you hear music that is so, it's 9 pages, and it's, you got letter ZZ, and you got double codas, and there's a hit here and a hit there, and then you got to choke the cymbal, make sure it doesn't ring over into bar 4, and you got to cut up. That's a controlling motherfucker. That person also has control issues too. It's clear indications to me. And once I started to shed all of those toxic behaviors, because as a band leader, I left a great deal to be desired. I was not very kind. I was not very patient.
Interesting.
Understanding. I was not very trusting, because I was hiding a lot. I was hiding behind aggression, and also some of that behavior was learned behavior. Some of that had been projected onto me by previous band leaders.
Sure.
So a lot of that was just unprocessed toxicity, and not knowing you don't have to treat people this way, nor should you treat people this way. So I went through a very rough period of immaturity and toxicity. And again, that might or might not show up in my music, but it certainly showed up in my band leading, much to my chagrin. But now that I love myself, and I love who I am, I know who I am, and I can be confident in all of that. I can be more confident in my playing, and more confident in my band leading, and just let them do their thing. I still do enjoy mentoring. I have a band called XYZ, which is X Generations, Y Generation Z, and I do a lot of cross-generational with the social cohorts to try to bring that together and mentor younger musicians. But again, I do it now from a place of love. Back in the days, it was from a place of fear and insecurity. But now I can talk to musicians, and if they do something, say, "Oh well, let's watch the tempo, or let's watch the volume here." And I also ask for their input. Even somebody who's 20 years old, I want to know what a 20-year-old mind in 2025 is thinking. What do you want to do? Bring that energy to my bandstand, because that keeps me fresh. That keeps me on my toes.
Yep.
So you put a bar of 5 in there, okay. Let's see how that would work. Whereas prior to that, I'd be like, absolutely not. You see?
Yeah.
And this is largely in part to my partner. My partner is younger than I am. So he says, try this, try this. Like we're very much into fitness. So he read someplace, because he's always reading shit, looking on TikTok. He read someplace that you should eat a half a cup or a cup of cottage cheese,
Yeah.
your meal or whatever it is. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's disgusting. But I'll try it. Let's see what we can do here. Because the only way this relationship is going to last is if I'm open.
Yeah, it's a yeah.
And that's any relationship.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
particularly a relationship where there's an age gap, we got to be open to each other's experiences and it's like I can sort of guide him through life and through our relationship by saying, once you hit these ages, things are going to start looking this way. You're going to start thinking a little differently. The way you think now can be very, very different than once you get my age. And then I get to listen to him and just hear him express himself and embrace life with such enthusiasm and also some naivete. And he says that, he says stuff, and I'm like, you really think that, huh? Yeah, you'll see. It's a lot of fun. It's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. I am 100% here for it.
Yeah.
I love where I am. I'm out late, but I feel as though I'm recapturing my youth. And they say, you got to be careful doing stuff like that. But no, I really honestly feel as though I'm recapturing the time and the years and the experiences that I did not have or wouldn't allow myself to have in my 20s and 30s, because I'm kind of a new me. It's kind of like with addiction. They say that,
Yep.
let's say you become addicted to substances at age 20, and then you're addicted for 10 years. And once you become sober 10 years later, when you're 30, you're still 20 emotionally.
Yep.
But emotionally, and even psychologically to a certain degree, I'm still kind of in my 20s. So I'm feeling that. I'm walking into that. I love that. I love that for me.
No, you have such a youthful energy, man. It's,
I try.
which is great. That's beautiful. We're here once. I always tell myself that. So
I want to try to get as much right as possible.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you started playing with the cats when you were 18, 19, and like all of us know, I remember I was at the university, and folks went for coffees and drinks, and I went to an empty room and I just practiced for 3 hours. So you miss a lot on life in a sense because you want to become good, and so yeah. But there's always time. It's never too late. So always
and
time.
you make the time. I
Yeah,
refuse
yeah.
to accept that. At 54, it's too late. Nope,
Oh,
absolutely not.
no way, man. Yeah, absolutely. Eric, just to ask you, how are you going to present the new record? I mean, any plans of coming to Europe, by the way, or with some sort of a version of a band, or
I would love to come to Europe, man, but like
it's gonna be hard, yeah.
I don't think people want Americans in their country, and I can't blame them. I don't think anybody wants Americans to come to their country.
With the customs now and everything, yeah, that's
Bro, it's
insane,
like,
man.
oh
Yeah.
God.
That's insane.
And I want to like wear a T-shirt that says, "I'm okay, I'm cool. I didn't vote for this. This is not my fault. Please don't blame me." And I love coming to Europe, and I love being out there. But it's so
hard,
weird right now.
Yeah.
And and if I come out there, am I going to be able to get back into my own country? I'm not like paranoid, but I know the things that they're trying to do.
I hear
So
you.
I'm like, I just need to stay domestic for a second, But I do have a few performances focusing on the record in the States this year.
Oh, beautiful.
But as far as coming across the pond, I'm going to have to look into it and see what's viable, what makes sense.
Sure.
But I honestly, I want to see how things are in about 4 months, because every day
It's
it's
changing, yeah.
fuckery. It's,
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, we read here over here in Europe, and I'm like, man, wow, really? It's insanity, man. It's like,
we'll just keep each other lifted up, man, because you know we're supposed to be better than this. We really are.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But beautiful, man. Well, if you're ever around in Europe, just drop me a line. We have a guest room here. We'll drink a glass of beer or wine together, and we'll,
Fantastic. I appreciate that. Thanks so much.
you'll share more stories about Joe and Freddie and all
Please,
these guys. I love
please,
those. So,
off the record.
off the record, yeah. But Eric, once again, thanks so much, man, for sharing some of this stuff, and I wish you all the best and everything. And
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
thank you.